On my first trip to Haiti in 2012, and no, I did not go with Marisol, I was not thinking so much about food. I was there to go with a group of people to do earthquake relief, because just 2 years before that, in 2010, a huge earthquake hit Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and almost 250,000 people were killed. Many hundreds of thousands more were seriously injured. Most of the buildings in and around Port-au-Prince were taken down to the ground. It was a devastating time. And so just 2.5 years later, I went with a group in September of 2012 to see what we could do to help rebuild the country. We were working on the church. And I was paying attention to a lot of other things besides food. I was paying attention to the culture, to the people. I was listening to the language, Creole. I was paying attention to a lot of things, but not so much the food, because when we went, they said, as an American, you'll get 3 meals a day. The food will be prepared to North American standards. You'll get bottled water. The bottled water will be used to wash the vegetables and everything like that. You don't have to worry. And we didn't have to worry. In fact, out of the 12 of us, not a single one got sick, not even a stomach ache. But I went back a year later in 2013, and it was a totally different experience. And this time we got loaded onto a sailboat, an old rickety wooden sailboat that really did look to be about 100 years old. And we sailed out into the harbor. And if you know anything about the geography of Haiti, it looks like a backwards sea. And in this big bay, there's an island called La Gonave. And the saying down there is that if Haiti is the country that the world forgot, then La Gonave is the island that Haiti forgot. That's how poor it is. So we arrived out on this island. And we were really with the people on this trip. On the trip before, we stayed at a school with a big wall around it. We felt like we were walled off from the people. But on this trip, we were right with the people. A family had moved out of this tiny little home in this tiny little village so that we could move into their home for a week. They took all their furniture and everything with them, and we moved in with our bunks and everything. And it was right in the middle of this village, right on the square, you could say, of this little village. And we ate our meals out on the front porch of this house. And it was a tiny little porch. We had small tables, and we were really crammed in around these chairs. And it was like we were on display for the village. And the kids loved us because on this little island, most of these kids had never seen a white face before. So we were a real source of novelty to them, and we brought them toys and really bonded with the kids. But I wasn't thinking about how on display we were until the second night. And one of the elder gentlemen in our group asked our translator, he said, we have our 3 meals a day at certain times. And he said, but I look around this village and I don't see people going into their homes to eat lunch or dinner. When do they eat? And the translator, still looking down at the table, he couldn't make eye contact with us. He said under his breath, he said, they eat when they can. And those 5 words just went through my heart like a knife. I thought, I know this intellectually. I know that food is scarce, but him saying it the way that he did, the fact that we were out on display, all the villagers could see us eating our 3 meals a day on that porch. I just wanted to run inside and eat in the dark. And it was really brought home the next day when I passed by the kitchen. And the kitchen, you have to understand, was a ramshack, a little shack that had a hole in the ground, and that's where charcoal was placed to cook our food over an open flame. And the 3 cooks that we hired were sitting there eating off of the plates that they had just emptied off of our table. In other words, they were eating our leftovers directly off the plate. And I thought, and I still think, what privilege, what right do I have to eat the way that I do and they eat what little that they do? And that question still stays with me. But there are a couple of things that I do know. Number one, it's not very expensive to provide a nutritious meal to someone in a third world country. In many places you can do it for $1 a day to feed somebody, as long as you have the right food channels, the right way to get the food to the people. My wife and I were in Sierra Leone 2.5 years ago, And we were at a girls' school there, and the director of the girls' school told us that a lot of the kids in her school come to school hungry and they go home hungry. She does what she can, but she also told us about the teachers who are supposed to be paid by the government of Sierra Leone, and they don't get paid, and so they have to beg food from others. And so we said, well, what would it take to help feed these teachers? She said, well, for $25, they can have a half a year's worth of rice. So before we left, we gave each of the teachers $25, and I wish we could have given them a whole lot more, but at least we gave them that much. The other thing that I learned from Jane, who is the leader of that girls' school, who is in our country right now, by the way, everywhere she goes, she says, "You Americans, you waste so much food." And she's absolutely right. I never get tired of hearing her say that, because experts tell us that about 40% of the food that we produce in this country goes to waste. And you know, the Native Americans tried to tell us years ago, don't kill what you're not going to use, what you're not going to eat. But we didn't listen to them. We slaughtered most of the bison out on the Great Plains, not because we needed to, but because we could. And our mothers, they used to tell us not to waste our food. And our mothers were right. And so this Thanksgiving, when you leave your peas on your plate, just remember what your mother might have told you years ago, that there's a starving child in Haiti or in Africa that would love to have those peas. Thank you.